am resident of Collinwood for YouTube, joined by my buddy Patrick McCray, author of the Dark Shadows Daybook. We're here to rid in the new year together. Patrick, how are you, buddy?
I'm fine. We have 2 minutes until the new year.
I know. It's going crazy. So
we should do a Poseidon adventure thing and turn the image upside down when it's midnight, like a tidal wave has hit the show.
There you go. I like that. The original star Gene Hackman, by the way. But so we're here to talk. First of all, we're here to talk Dark Shadows first, like the first time we both watch it. But we're also here to discuss episode 2002 for
1000. Oh wait, it's 1202.
1202. Yes, thank you. For Dark Shadows Parallel Time. But first, Patrick had suggested let's talk Dark Shadows first. So I'll let you go first, my friend.
So yeah, I thought it was appropriate for, New Year's Eve and things like that to talk about the first time we saw Dark Shadows and what we made of the experience. The first step. Oh, it's midnight, Jewel. Here it is.
Happy New Year.
2003. Happy New Year, sir.
Happy New Year, Patrick.
Happy New Year. It was, in fact, on New Year's Eve, 1981. I was watching Kelly's Heroes with my mother and some of her friends, and an ad came on WAVE. It was the late movie, and an ad came on WAVE saying that the subsequent Monday, whatever the next Monday was going to be, this Dark Shadows thing was going to start. And I was a monster kid, and I'd never heard of it, which I think is a real testament to what the media was like back then. That without the internet, without things sort of, being out there forever, Dark Shadows not being in syndication, not having anything new, disappeared so quickly and so hardcore, because this was only 10 years after it went off the air, that that someone who became aware of monster culture as early as maybe 1975, which is when I first became aware of the Universal monsters and things, I'd never heard of this. I thought it was a practical joke, and little genius that I was, I'd heard of everything, but I had not heard this. And I was told, I say this before, that Kate Jackson was on. They said, oh, it's a vampire, and I got really excited, and then they said the deadly 2 words that followed: soap opera. And I was as enthusiastic as any 10-year-old would be at the mention of that. And oh, great. And they said, Kate Jackson's on. And I've had a theory for a long time that, in fact, a friend of mine wanted to have a website called The Hot One Really Was, and it would be about, on TV shows and things like that, the person everyone thought was the babe. No, it was somebody else. So everybody thought it was Farrah. It was actually Kate Jackson. Everybody thought it was Lonnie Anderson. It was actually Jan Smithers on WKRP, things like that. But anyway, so I was really excited for Kate Jackson. Little did I know, there'd be over 1,000 episodes or something before she would show up. But I tuned in, and it was sort of wonderful, because it was at about 4:30 or 5 in the afternoon, maybe 5:30 at the latest, because I think it was right before the news. But it was around the time the Dark Shadows had been on, and it really looked like something from an alien world. It's amazing how much visually life had changed. But I was watching it on a black and white TV, so the lack of color didn't bother me, and I don't know if I kept watching it out of obligation or just to see the vampire show up or what. Jason McGuire was interesting. Willie Loomis was interesting. The portrait, which I think had a heartbeat at that point,
yes,
was interesting. And then we came to that hand.
Yeah.
And as far as I know, I mean, it was really wacky to be dropped off in the middle of a story and to have to catch up. And, the director of Empire Strikes Back has this theory that that's what you should do with audience members. is start them in the middle of the action and force them to put the pieces together themselves. And I think he's right, because that's exactly what watching Dark Shadows did for me. And when that hand came out, one of the things that I really wanted to talk about when I did this analysis of it that's in the daybook, and Wallace kind of asked me to pull it back a little bit, maybe because it was a cliche, but it really, I still got a reference in, and it was true. I felt like it was an image that I had always known, even though I had never seen it. It just seemed primally real. I don't know, maybe if I'd seen a still of it somewhere in one of those little kids' books about monster movies or something like that. But at that point, there was always just enough to make me keep watching. And I think one of the other reasons that I kept watching this show was that, when it got into the kidnapping story and so on and so forth, it felt like you were really earning a big finish. No pun intended. I mean, it really felt like you were earning whatever was going to happen, because you paid your dues as a 10-year-old Dark Shadows viewer at the beginning of the show. In that sense, it wasn't the most exciting thing on the planet, but it to a kid that age, but you felt like you were almost like at a job, but a job that was building character, and somehow I was kind of falling in love with it. And I don't know if it was entirely because I felt obligated to, because it was part of monster culture, it was this adult thing. I think it really was that even as early as, the winter of '82, I don't know of any kind of television series or anything outside Tomb of Dracula comic that would have been accessible to kids that gave them such a textured, nuanced story about vampires and witches and werewolves and things like that, and paid such attention to character. Because there was no VHS or anything like that, it was as temporary, ephemeral as it was for people who watched it, 10 years before. And you had to watch it because you thought this is something really special that might never come again. Because I quickly realized, there's a Fangoria article that came out around that time, and I quickly realized how much of the show there was, and that the idea of it, me watching it for 10 weeks and then it cycles back into another series of reruns or something like Star Trek, well, that no, you get one chance to see this, and that was it, and that made it absolutely electric. And that was how, and it was, by gum, I mean, gosh, what is 2022 minus 1981? It's something. I mean, it's, I don't know, I'm not a mathematician, but it's what, 40 years or something?
Yeah, 2023 minus, because we're in minus 1981, but yeah, it's 40 years.
40 years. So this is basically the 40th anniversary right now. Right now is the 40th anniversary of when I first heard about Dark Shadows.
Cool.
And it changed my life. So how about you?
I was introduced to Dark Shadows all by myself. And really, that my story dates back to in 1990, when my mother decided to show me and my brother John Carpenter's Halloween. And she basically, me and my brother had a crash course through horror. And about the mid-90s, she basically left me to myself, and because she didn't have time for television anymore, and I was home alone a lot, and I'm there one morning, and I just turned it on the Sci-Fi Channel, and it said, "Oh, there's a show called Dark Shadows." I was like, "All right, I'll check it out." And it was coming on, and I saw this girl on this train. Her name was Victoria Winters. So I got to see
Dark. You started then?
Yeah.
With episode 1?
Yeah, Sci-Fi Channel had aired it from the beginning. and God bless them for it, So I would say that for me, I was the luckiest Dark Shadows fan that I was able to do that. And, simply because I got to see it from the beginning and get introduced.
How old were you?
Let me see. 18, 10, 11, 12. I think I was 13, 14.
And you put up with that pen story. Did you know how crazy the show was going to get?
No, because here's the thing.
You are pure. You are pure.
Keep in mind, the internet wasn't what it was today. That's one thing. I think that's something. Today's youth is spoiled by the internet. And I don't mean that as a knock. I just mean that it's. I remember when you had to be patient when you were a television viewer, whether you were viewing something you never heard of or viewing something brand new, because something you never heard of was, in a sense, brand new, like Dark Shadows.
Did they do 2 episodes a day?
The Sci-Fi Channel actually did 4 episodes a day. So it was from 8 to 10. So 8 a.m. to 10, I think it's 4. So 4 episodes a day, and I would watch them. And so I'm a very patient person. So I'm watching the show. And my mom walked in one day, and it was the episode when Josette's ghost first appeared. And she goes, "What are you watching?" And I said, "It's a show called Dark Shadows. Have you ever heard of it?" And she said, "Yeah, I've heard of it." So she didn't say anything. She kept her mouth shut. My mom's not somebody who spoils something for anybody. This is why I tell my wife when we're watching something, she goes, "What's going to happen? What's going to happen?" And I've seen something. I'm like, "Just watch it." Because that was my mother. Just watch it. Why should I spoil anything for you? Because what's the point?
What a great mom.
And so she and I, one day I was walking down, and I was nearing the episode where Barnabas comes out the coffin, and I did not know they were going the vampire route yet. I heard the heartbeat through the porch. I'm thinking, that's interesting. What's going to happen here? So yeah. my mom goes, "Are you still watching that show?" I said, "Dark Shadows?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Did the vampire show up yet?" And that was the one time she did spoil. I'm like, "What?" And the rest, and then I saw it, and I'm like, "Oh, okay, this is the vampire." And I knew Jonathan Fritz's character was a vampire. I really, from the moment I saw Victorian Winters and I heard Alexander Moltke's voice, all I can say is I was hooked. And I think that's the one thing I would say about viewership for any show, especially Dark Shadows: patience. It requires patience to watch it.
Oh yeah, it teaches patience away.
It does, and it makes you appreciate, because by the time I watched Dark Shadows, it wasn't just horror that I watched. It was all the westerns I'd watched with my grandfather, and all the old movies I'd watched in black and white. And so I had an appreciation for older movies. So when I watched Dark Shadows, it made the older movies, the older shows, they made you appreciate patience as a youngster and appreciate the artwork that they did and the stories they were trying to tell. And Dark Shadows does that tenfold. And so I think the most, and it's weird to say this because, again, I'm not from the same era as the 60s, but when I saw the show transfer to color, I was like sort of shocked at first. It's like, what? It's in color? And so, and I addressed this in, do I prefer color or black and white? I prefer it in black and white. But I don't mind the color episodes. I think they're good. But I love the show for what it is. It's just purely, no matter how many times you watch it, it's pure entertainment and suspense and horror. It has everything you could want in it: romance, comedy, horror. it's a show that wasn't just right for its time. It was a show that was truly ahead of its time and still is.
You know what? That's beautiful. It's. I, you know, I have nothing I could or should add to that, other than saying that we are very lucky to have you, and that is a wonderful articulation of everything about this show. All of life's mysteries are solved on Dark Shadows. Um, Another interesting thing that people can do right now with this video is that they can, if they look around on YouTube, it's different in different places. They go to the little gear for the settings for this video. They can go in and they can go to this area that says speed. And if you click that and go to 0.5, like negative 0.5, it will slow us down by 50%, but it won't change the pitch of our voices, and we will sound drunk. I've been doing this all day with our videos, and of course, there's nothing funny about alcoholism. But we're not talking about alcoholism. We're talking about two people who aren't drunk, who are made to sound drunk, and that's just goofy. And I advise everyone to do that. I mean, anything I say sounds a little tipsy anyway, even though I'm not. And here, I mean, I just sound schnockered, 3 sheets to the wind. And it's very funny. I advise everyone to.
I didn't know that.
I just discovered it. It's really funny. You do it with Jordan Peterson. That's hilarious.
Oh my god! I think I might. I'll try it with a YouTuber I like. So.
Oh, try it with one you don't like. It's even better.
Oh god! But so we're also here to discuss episode 1,1200, 0 and 1 and 2. And
what an episode!
Yeah.
There's a lot going on in this episode, and not all of it is cool.
I really like how, now to recap, in episode 1201, we find out that Catherine has found out about the lottery. Bramwell has told her, and she burns the lottery slips. We also find out that Flora insists that 2 more slips be made up, one for her and one for Julia, and no, not one for Melanie. Yeah. Welcome to
the feminism on the march. Jeez, God. Look, we can. If I were a woman on that show, I would say, we can be sexist for just a little while longer. It's okay.
Right. And so she agreed. She asked that the lottery be put off so her and Morgan can be married. And this is where when she comes out the house, her and Flora run into Bramwell, and she tells Bramwell she's going to decide to marry Morgan. Bramwell, just like his father kidnapped Maggie in another parallel time, he kidnaps Catherine, and I believe
very kidnapping.
Yeah, the room he puts her in, I could be mistaken. I believe it's Angelique's old room, isn't it?
I don't know. It might be. It's stony.
Yeah, I think it is. But you're right. This kidnapping is very interesting because in this episode that we're about to talk about, Catherine and Bramwell have sex.
What? I'm sorry. What is that?
Well, here's now.
When a man meets a woman. Anyway, Joel, I'm just kidding. Yes, it seems that they do.
Right. And now, for most people who watch modern television, do you see them get naked? No. 60s television was very different than what you see today. And if you go back to even the black and white films, what you'll see usually is you'll see a man buttoning up his shirt or a woman fixing her blouse. That indicates sex. Here in this episode, you see Laura Parker's as her character laying on the bed, and she looks very satisfied, and you see Bramwell button up his last button on his shirt, And he said, "Are you mad?" He asked her, "Are you mad at me?" And she goes, she holds his hand, which I like the gesture because she's grabbing his hand. It gives every symbol that they've made love. And it's really well sold by the actor and actress.
It also diffuses the idea that she was his captive and he raped her,
Yeah.
which is a really obvious but disturbing bit of subtext
Yeah.
that could have been there. And the writers were very smart to present it the way they did, because if they had done anything less, they would have not necessarily lost viewers, but probably lost viewers. And what a weird moment for, imagine being a parent back then, and it's like, well, Dark Shadows, it's got some scary, they melt Evan Hanley's face and stuff, but we don't have to worry about like other stuff. And you finally decide to sit down with your child and watch this show they've been running home at 4:30 to see every day, and it's that one, because that happened somewhere.
Yeah.
And I feel so sorry for that kid. Ma, I swear they didn't do anything like that before. I really mean it, Ma, no. And it's like Christmas Story. He's got the lump, bar of soap in his mouth, and vey. But it's a very it is a new place that Dark Shadows goes, and there's strange tension all over it. And the brilliance of Frid's portrayal of Barnabas, and partly just because the actor himself is so terrified, is that there is no sexual subtext.
Yeah.
When Barnabas kidnaps Maggie, it's not to say that it's off the table, but it's like at the other end of the table behind the bread and the turkey and some other. We're not worried about that right now.
Right.
Here, there's no turkey on it. It's the only thing on the table.
Yeah.
And Frid shows a lot of range, because we buy him completely as someone who would and could and did.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful how Laura, it's really well written, but it's really beautiful how Laura and Jonathan play this off. It's just as much, both the writers and the actors and actress really sell this home, and they bring this home too on screen when she's laying in bed and she's got this sort of relaxed smile on her face, and the conversation is very much, it's still an adult conversation even after they're done, because when she stands up she goes, I still love Morgan. And he sort of looks like he's been like really, you really, like, yes. So, and I love the scene that follows, because what you have happen is Morgan is now wanting to go to the old house because he feels Bramwell has her, and Quentin's made him aware. And Quentin goes with the pistol, with the 6-shooter, and he doesn't. I love how he doesn't draw it right away. And he says, "May I come in?" And he's already in the drawing room. And Bramwell, Jonathan Frid's character, reminds him of that. He goes, "You're already." He goes, "Okay, where is she? Where is he?" He goes, "Where's Catherine?" And he's like, "You're not taking her." And he blocks the steps. And that's when Quentin draws his gun. I had mentioned this before in the previous video I did yesterday, that the episode before this really cements Quentin as the baby face, as this arc, as you pointed out. But this episode cements it even more, because he did everything not to draw that gun. And when he does, you do feel sort of sorry for Bramwell, but you sort of get, hey, this woman has said to Bramwell, I want to marry Morgan, despite my feelings for Morgan. But Quentin goes up and gets her, and I love the look that Laura Parker gives. It's sort of sad and sort of serene, and Bramwell sort of gives the same look as she's going out the door with Quentin. What did you think?
In the best sense, this is the most grown-up episode of Dark Shadows they ever did.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, this is about, like soap operas could be. This is about things that adults deal with that really have nothing to do with the supernatural and the ambiguity of adult feelings. And I can only think that, I always want to say Jonathan Frakes, that Jonathan Frid and Laura Parker kind of looked at this and went to whoever wrote it. It was either Sam or Gordon, and said, "Thank you. We get to be grown-ups in this one." And I think that's great. Having said that, had this episode been filmed in 1968 in the regular prime storyline, contemporary 1968, what would have happened is that Barnabas, that Catherine would have appeared, but she would have kind of looked strangely angular in the dress, and her voice would be strangely falsetto, and she'd have a big hat with a veil hanging down. And Quentin would have taken her away and gotten her back to Collinwood. Morgan would have insisted on taking off the veil, and it would have been Willie Loomis, who had been forced to dress up like her as a decoy, and Barnabas would be getting away with the real girl, whoever it was. God, wouldn't that have been great?
I like that.
Oh, Morgan, yes, it is I, your beloved Catherine. You get any chicken or shiny buttons? Because Adam's getting upset. And it's like, that doesn't sound like, hey, wait a minute. And yeah.
Speaking of John Carlin.
And then there would have been a scene later where Morgan and Catherine be in the bedroom, and Catherine saying it happens to all men at some point. And Morgan would just be sitting on the bed, sadly looking at the veil. And you know that he would have been missing Willie Loomis in that dress.
He would have been. Speaking of John Carlin, he plays Kendrick Young.
On here. Continue.
Yeah, he plays Kendrick Young in 1841 Parallel Time, and I like how he sneaks into the house and he's sneaking upstairs. At first I thought this was Bramwell, but no, I gotta remember Kendrick Young is looking for his sister, who has left, so they say. But he runs into Melanie, and God, now that you mention about her internal organs, all I can see is how thin Nancy Barrett is. But
really, I mean, that was sort of normal for a lot of women at that time. My mother was that skinny, but boy, it sure looks unhealthy. I mean, and this is not body shaming. This is not picking on Nancy Baird or anything like that. But it does sort of make me concerned about, was she just a skinny girl, and she is a tiny woman, or I just hate to think that there's an eating disorder. I'm not saying there was, but when I look at it, I just go, okay.
Well, here's the thing. Maybe I'm guessing, and this is just my best guess and opinion. So please, whoever watches, don't take this as fact. I'm thinking because Melanie is supposed to be younger than everybody in the house, that they made her, maybe she had to cut down on eating and look a little thinner and younger. I know that sounds weird.
It could be, or it could be that David Ford just consumed everything on the table before she could get to it. Oh, damn, and it was gone. She didn't get a serving.
Perhaps. Oh, my God. But what did you think of Melanie and Kendrick's chemistry?
I don't, because that's
Question.
Live. Because she's pretty cray-cray here. And she's not entirely the person that, I think she'll be. I don't know. What do you think of Melanie and Kendrick's chemistry?
I like it because it's the first time they're actually literally having a one-on-one conversation without anybody being around, without Aunt Julia interfering and being up Melanie's rear end. And so you have this very passionate woman who's feeling sorry for this man who's looking for his sister, which is it seems very real and very heartfelt, which that's what I like about it most. But I also like the fact that later on, Melanie because they haven't held the lottery, is sort of acting crazy later on.
Well, isn't she under some sort of crazy making curse too? Like
Yeah.
when the lottery room is broken, it's like she gets much saner. I mean, doesn't that happen? Isn't that a thing?
Well, it's sort of happening in this episode too, because they haven't. Keep in mind, in the previous episode, for those who haven't ever watched these episodes, in the previous episode, Catherine burned the lottery slips. They didn't hold it because they're going to have this wedding. So now that they didn't hold the lottery when they usually hold the damn thing, you have Melanie who's sort of halfway going crazy at later night, because Quentin, she's taking the candle thing and putting out the candles, and Quentin's watching her. He's like, Melanie, are you all right? I'm thinking, Quentin, does she look all right, dude? No.
It suggests that the baseline for sanity at that point in 1841 parallel time is very low. You know, it's like if he has to look at this and ask you, are you, you know, oh, I mean, there's craziness all over the place. But it's, you know, it's one of those things. Just listening to you talk about this makes me really grateful that you're talking about this section of the series, which is so often ignored. And it makes me appreciate the fact that this is kind of, I said this before, this is the Dark Shadows spinoff. And if you like Dark Shadows, you have no reason not to like this storyline. Yeah. And if you don't like this storyline, you don't like Dark Shadows. You might like Barnabas, you might like Quentin, you might like some of the characters, and that's cool.
Yep.
But, you know, people like to say, oh, that stuff before Barnabas shows up is pure Dark Shadows, the real, it's you know, and it's like, you're out of your Vulcan mind. But this really is, because it shows that Dark Shadows can be Dark Shadowsy without any of the trappings that we're used to.
Yeah. And it's really, I know the actors have been working together for a while in the series, but they really don't miss a beat at all, especially with the new cast member in Keith Prentice. They don't miss a beat at all in this, which is nice. I mean, sure, I think Keith Prentice has one line flub in the very beginning episode, but it's Dark Shadows. There's always goof ups, you know? So
it was a very loud line flub, whatever it was. He said it at full volume.
Yes, he did.
The boom mic operator had it. That's what it was. You know, some people like to call this show Mic Shadows because there's so many, you know, boom mic shadows over people. Yeah, I think Keith Prentice just said, "You're not going to do that with me." Trust me, they can hear me down at the news.
What did you, in this episode, what did you think of, because Keith Prentice is Morgan Collins, he wants to kill Bramwell for taking Catherine, and Catherine says, no, there's no need for that. He didn't hurt me. Well, no, he didn't hurt you, but you ain't saying what did happen. What did you think of that?
It's 1795 as if it happened in real life.
Yeah.
You know, with the Jeremiah stuff and the crisscross love curse business and the devil tattoo on the hand. It doesn't pull any punches. It shows people being exactly as angry as they would be. And that does two things. A, it gives me a slice of what I think is a little bit closer to reality. And B, it makes me admire how much Barnabas stands up for culture and civilization and etiquette, even in that age. And not only that, but the fact that he's probably not that interested in Josette, you know, because if he were, he'd be behaving like Morgan.
Yeah.
But he's not, you know. Well, I suppose we must have a duel. I mean, that's as heated as he gets. So yeah, that's what do you think?
I really like the fact that, again, Keith Prentice does do good. I think Keith Prentice does a good job as Morgan. My only real issue, and it's not really, I don't think it's him nor the writers. I just think it's the way things are being delivered to. me and you touched upon this before. You can, and it's again his official heel turn hasn't even happened yet. But you can sort of tell it is going to happen, and so it's sort of predictable that he's going to be your heel. But I do like the fact that they have all these other characters here with Catherine, with Daphne, with Quentin, and even you have John Carlin playing a character he's never played before in Kendrick Young, which is nice to see. It's nice to see you take John Carlin and give him a fresh coat of paint, because they always did that with him with Willie Loomis, and that I loved him as Desmond. That's my favorite character, Desmond Collins. But Kendrick Young is still nice to see him play a different character. And Melanie, I really love Melanie in this episode for all she is here, for the conversations she has with Kendrick, and later at night when she's putting out the candles with, and David Selby's just standing there like watching, like, hey, are you all right, Melanie?
She's not.
It's like, yeah, Quentin, do you got a phone, buddy? Yeah, I don't think the Ghostbusters are in existence yet, but you might need to call an exorcist.
Exactly.
It's such a cool scene too. I love how for those who go back and watch this, it's episode 1202, and Nancy Barrett's just taking the little candle thing and she's putting out the candles, and there's you hear this little twinkling music playing in the background, but it's being done so casual at first you might not notice it, but pay close attention as David Selby turns and he's like, Melanie? And it's like, oh crap, she's possessed.
And that's 9/10 of the law.
Yes. What did you love about this episode most?
I think everything is overshadowed by the material with Bromwell and Catherine. Yeah. You know, most Dark Shadows episodes have references to some like Rockstar blockbuster scene that either happened or is going to happen. You know, oh yeah, when we get around to creating Adam, you'll see something then. Or you know, a better than average Dark Shadows episode has a Rockstar moment. Certain extraordinary episodes are just wall-to-wall plot and stuff happening. But this has that Rockstar moment of the fact that he's holding her captive, but not, I hate to say not really, because I mean he is. However, given the fact that he is in love with her and so on, you know, we have to ask if she really said, no, Bromwell, I'm serious. I really want to go. I really mean it. It's time for me to go. He would have probably, I hope, said, okay. So there's a little bit, I think, of role play.
Well, I love what you just touched upon, because in the scene before they have sex, we'll say, she does.
That's not, you treated that like it was a euphemism. No, I mean, that's actually what they do. That's that time that Roger Collins had the horrible drinking problem. You know, yes, they had sex.
Right. Well, before that happens, there's Bramwell is reminiscing with Catherine about the time he followed her and he made her miss church, and and he then asked, well, do you still want to go? And she's like, no. She says no, and they embrace, and then they cut away. And when they do come back to him, that's when you see Catherine laying on the bed and Bramwell buttoning up his last button, hinting that they made love. So it's a really great way. You're right. The writers were very smart with this. Very, very smart. They knew what they were doing, and so did the actress and the actor.
It's a moment, beautiful, mature theater.
Yes, it is, and it's wonderful to watch too. I know some people are going to view it because Bramwell does forcibly kiss her, if you will, But after, if you can get past that for just a split second, and really it only lasts a split second too, and when they get into the adult conversation of it all before the love scene, it's worth it. It's worth it to watch it.
Yeah, Jewel, you're right. And one of the things that I was in a conversation with somebody the other day about how in the columns I deal with a lot of the sexual politics that go on, and the incredibly weird mixed feelings that we have when Maggie is kidnapped.
Right.
Because, I mean, on one hand, you got to side with the kidnapping victim. On the other hand, Barnabas, he's doing the wrong thing, but he sort of has the right reasons, and it's out of optimism, and there's not going to be a physical violation. We know that, except making her dress in a gunny sack. And and one of the things that for the longest time politically, I felt like I had to take a stand on something and then rationalize it all the way through. And what I have come to, be, I don't know if comfortable is the right word, but used to, is that Dark Shadows allows us to look at two contradictory ideas. Because, yeah, there is a rapey vibe in that kiss and in her being held captive. I'm talking about Catherine now.
Yeah.
And then she later is clearly not resentful and receptive, but I'm not going to then go back and say, so it makes it okay to treat someone like that. No, it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I have gotten comfortable with watching and talking about that ambiguity without having to have an answer for it, except saying, God, it's complicated. And Dark Shadows, really, since almost its inception, was comfortable with a certain degree of cognitive dissonance, because that's what life is made of.
I think really in many ways, this episode answers that itself by going, Catherine still loves Bramwell in every way. I mean, in the previous episode prior to this, she's defending him when Morgan calls him a coward, and she's like, no, he's no coward. And in this episode, again, the kiss, okay, yeah, it's a little forceful, but again, once they start talking and she remembers what he's talking about, you can see it in Catherine, aka Laura Parker's face, that she's telling God, yeah, I remember that, and I remember the times we had, and she still loves this man. So she's in a room with a man she's in love with, and that's a key thing too.
Yeah. Complicated stuff.
It really is, and it's really adult, like you said. What did you think of? What did you think of Melody's possession here?
It's wonderfully creepy.
It is.
We are used to seeing possessed people, every day, really. But no, seriously, we're used to seeing, possessed people as being really ugly and physically transformed, and they commit to being um, a pawn of a ghost or something. They go full bore with it in the media. And here it's the old Bride of Frankenstein theory that sometimes it's very, very pretty people who do very, very horrible things. And I love that it plays with the idea that, okay, yeah, she's possessed. She could also just be crazy, and the horrible reality that we put up with much more craziness from attractive looking people than we do from somebody who looks like Linda Blair in The Exorcist. It's the same mojo that the movie Last Exorcism, which I think is a dynamite film, really plays a lot with. Have you seen that movie?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You have?
Yes.
It's a good movie. And the way Ashley Bell goes back and forth, where sometimes she's incredibly mature, sometimes she's just, waif-like, and sometimes she's monstrous. It does a lot to keep the audience off balance, and nowhere is it done better than with Melanie here.
Yeah. And I think it's done well too, because you have Nancy Barrett, who's being possessed, great actress. And I just love how David Selby plays this. He's legitimately asking her, "Hey, are you okay?" No question.
Yeah.
She ain't okay. Really, really good. I'm going to do episode 1203 tomorrow night. Are you up for it to come back tomorrow night, or?
Let me ask you something.
Yeah.
If this camera could move, you would see wild horses in this room, and they could not stop me from being there. If you want me back, I'll be.
Absolutely. I want you
thrilled.
back, brother. Absolutely. Is there anything you want to add before we get on out of here?
Happy New Year.
Absolutely. First of all, Happy New Year to you, Patrick. God bless you, man. I love you,
God
brother.
bless you.
I love you, brother. Link to the Dark Shadows Daybook is going to be in the description box as always. Guys, if you haven't bought that yet, go pick it up. It is well worth a read. Happy New Year from Patrick, and also Happy New Year from me. Guys, enjoy your 2023. We hope you are safe, and we'll be back tomorrow night with another episode of 1941 Parallel Time. See you tomorrow night, Patrick. Have a good night, buddy.
Joel, hey, Joel.
What's
One
up?
other thing. Hey, are we still recording?
Yes.
Good. Hey, guys, listen. If for whatever reason you've decided to do this, watch this after your New Year's celebration, and it's 1:45 in the morning or something like that, get an Uber. Don't drive. If you've had too much, seriously, don't drive. Do the smart thing. Stay at your friend's house.
Absolutely. Be responsible and have a designated driver too. Do the right thing. Be safe behind the wheels, as always. But yep, have a happy New Year, Patrick, and have a happy New Year to all the DS fans. Bye bye. Yep, bye.